It looks like officially Austin Ekeler will be staying put, and it's a win-win because the Chargers get to keep their RB1 happy, and Austin Ekeler gets the pay raise he very much deserves.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 7 seasons together, but this is our 5th season as host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on YouTube and listen wherever you get your podcast from. And today, we are talking about Austin Ekeler's pay raise and why that's important for the Chargers to get that distraction away from the team after what happened with the whole Melvin Gordon situation. And we're going to talk to someone that was actually there covering the team for that, Eric D. Williams, who used to cover the Chargers for ESPN, and one of our first ever guests on the show, comes back to tell us a little bit about the differences between Justin Herbert and Phillip Rivers, the differences between how this went down with Austin Ekeler and Melvin Gordon, and so much more. So cool to get him back on again. But it starts, David, with one of the biggest stories of the offseason, which was Austin Ekeler requesting that he can go seek out a trade partner for the Chargers. Now, it doesn't seem like that will happen. It seems like he's staying put, and to me, that's a win-win.
It absolutely is a win-win. Like, this is exactly what Austin Ekeler was trying to accomplish. He just wanted to be compensated for the production that he was able to give to the Chargers the last couple of years. And I think when you look at his contract, which is, about $6.25 million per year, that's pretty much the tops of what the free agent running backs got this offseason. And the difference is Austin Ekeler's production far superseded anybody who was out there on the market who got a contract. So I think it's right that he wanted to get more money. He definitely outperformed his current deal, and I think this is a great decision by the Chargers to be able to give him some probably very achievable incentives to make him feel like he's getting some more money for what he has done and what they expect him to do.
Yeah, and I mean, that's part of business, right? Is like, you don't want to pay someone for past production. You want to pay them for what they're going to do, right? And I mean, you would think saying that this is a bad idea for the Chargers because they already have him under contract, right? But it's not that simple. So I think giving him, up to $1.75 million in incentives, almost $2 million according to Adam Schefter, puts him well above those guys, right? Puts him well above anyone that just signed in free agency. I'm sure they're going to be attainable, kind of incentives for him to get that money. And for the Chargers, you get to keep an absolute, monstrous part of your offense, right? The only running back you feel really good about going into the season, while also, David, keeping your future cap situation looking good, right? Because now they buy themselves some time with Austin Ekeler to see what he looks like this year, right? To see what they want to do next year, because you were able to make him happy. You're not going to have a big distraction, but you're also keeping some flexibility for yourself where you're not rushing into, giving him a 3-year, $12 million a year extension.
And that's typically how the Chargers move too. I mean, they're just not an organization that throws out extensions too early. Like, they really want to make sure.
When they tried to extend them, right? Like, that's the important thing to remember here too. Is like, how many years was that? I don't know. Because it's starting at age 29.
Right. So you got to figure. I mean, obviously it wasn't the numbers that he was expecting, but I mean, for him and for the team, I think this is a great move because you don't have to worry about the Melvin Gordon type situation coming out and coming to fruition, because that was a major distraction for everybody. I mean, for Melvin Gordon, for the Chargers, it wasn't a good situation. He ended up sitting out 6 games, and then when he came back, he was definitely not in shape. He wasn't in the right mindset, and he wasn't productive. And so this just was a bad situation. This is a much better situation for Austin Ekeler and for the Chargers. They can pretty much put this situation to bed. They can both come back feeling very good about their resolution to this, and they can focus on playing football and winning football games for the Chargers.
Yeah, and it was interesting hearing Eric Williams kind of point on that, because he was talking about just kind of the impact it had on the team that year that was coming off of a really good season, and how him holding out kind of affected everyone. And now at least the Chargers don't have to worry about that, right? I mean, not having that distraction, I think, is going to be something that definitely benefits the team. And I think the other thing about this too is it's just less pressure for either, Isaiah Spiller or Joshua Kelly or both of them to have to go off this year, right? Like, if you traded Austin Ekeler, like, it's, a lot of nice things you could project for the two guys they would have left, but that would basically be all it is, because with those guys, you've never seen it for a consistent, for a full season in Josh Kelly's case, right? Or in Isaiah Spiller at all at this level. So I think having this guy back in the fold, he is invaluable. You don't have to worry now as Chargers fans that he's going to be traded or that it's going to be a big distraction, because that Melvin Gordon thing was something nobody wanted to see play out again. And it's so interesting because it was Austin Ekeler who ended up getting the long-term contract from the Chargers and not Melvin Gordon after everything and how it played out there. But I think that just him showing up at training camp, him getting in early to learn Kellen Moore's offense, that is something that I think is going to be valuable. But I think when you look at this unit, David, even though this is nice, it's important to realize it's not an extension, right?
Right.
So at this moment, the only running back still under contract after 2023 is Isaiah Spiller, who the everydayers already know we are actually talking to tomorrow. So it's going to be very fun to get him on the show through the Chargers. He's going to come on and do a segment with us. So we're very, very excited about that. All of the guests this week. But I do think that, it's still a room that is going to have big question marks after this year, right? Because Josh Kelly is going to be a free agent. Austin Ekeler is going to be a free agent. And like, this is the thing now, David, is like, you put yourself in a situation is what do you do? Even if Austin Ekeler goes off, if he goes up for another 15 touchdowns, are you going to give him that extension? So I think there's still some question marks even after, good news today.
Yeah, I mean, I think the news is great for this season. And honestly, I don't really feel like this resolution has any impact on what's going to happen after the season. I still feel like Austin Ekeler is going to be looking for the $10+ million per season that he's going to want. And the Chargers, I don't think, are going to give him that money. And I think it's just going to be to where he has another great season and he goes and signs with somebody else. So the Chargers are going to have to hope that Isaiah Spiller is able to come out in his sophomore season and really produce and really look like the type of running back that they thought they were bringing into the fold. A guy that, can really get those tough yards in between the tackles, a guy that can really get some touchdowns for you and be productive. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Or else the carousel of trying to find the right mix at running back is just going to continue, and they're going to have to continue to invest draft resources on trying to bring in the right guy. So, I mean, I like I like the resolution. I think it's great for the team. It's great for Austin Ekeler. But after this season, the same questions still remain. Is it going to be Josh Kelly? Is it going to be Isaiah Spiller? This season is going to be very big in determining how that room is going to look.
Yeah, and I mean, today is a very important deal for 2023, right?
Yeah.
I mean, after that, we're going to have to see, because I think what you don't want is just to be in a situation last year that you weren't in this year, where you feel like you have to take somebody
exactly
in the draft, right? And it feels like right now they already have a position at tight end where it feels like that going into next year is going to be a huge need for them, right? After Gerald Everett's contract expires, unless we, see one of the most miraculous comebacks ever from Trey McKitty, like it feels like the Chargers are already going to be kind of there with tight end. You don't want to have to go into the next offseason needing a starting tight end and needing a starting running back, right? Because when you need things like that, it's very, very tough to find value in them. And that's a spot that you would hope that the Chargers could kind of avoid. But they would still have options with Austin Ekeler if they really wanted to, right? If they want to kick the can down the road, they could franchise tag Austin Ekeler for a big number. I don't think they're going to want to do that.
Yeah.
It would be hard to believe, but it's still going to be a position group going forward where, like, the future of that position on the Chargers, I mean, we have to hope it's Isaiah Spiller, and I'm excited to talk to him tomorrow about that, because that is kind of what he's going to have on his shoulders, and hopefully he can show us something this year to get Chargers fans excited about it. But we do have a very special guest, and I can't keep him waiting. We have Eric Williams on the show today, who covers the NFC West right now for Fox Sports, but covered the Chargers for a very long time for ESPN, a multiple-time reoccurring guest on this show, and always brings it and still has a great finger on the pulse of everything going on with the Chargers, and also has some insight into Chargers teams past with Phillip Rivers and some of the coaches of years past as well. So we got to get to him, but first I do need to tell you guys that you guys should be making a fast break to the best betting place you could find, and it is FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. The finals are about to be set, guys, and you know where you should be going for the action because one of the great things about FanDuel, I think that sets them apart, is just the kind of bets you can make there. They have so many different fun bets that are going to keep you so in tune with everything going on in the game, and you can just get so specific where you're going to look at a game and there's not going to be a way that you're not going to find the bet that you want on that game, right? And there's always great promotions going on every day, and most importantly, it's a safe and secure app, and you get paid instantly. There's no better place to base all of your playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, guys, we have another very special guest this week. David, the guest booker extraordinaire, has been busy on this one, and this one is really, really cool for us because this is one of the first guys that helped us out on this beat when we first started Locked On Chargers. One of our most frequenting guests, especially early on. We have Eric D. Williams on the show, someone who covered the Chargers for a long time for ESPN, now currently covers the NFC West for Fox Sports. Fox Sports has also done, the Rams for Sports Illustrated, has been all over the place at the NFL level. Eric, been a long time, man. Great to see you back.
What's up, fellas? It's great to see you as well. Appreciate you having me on again and looking forward to talk a little bit of Bolts.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, you were the guy for us. I mean, you were where we went for all of our Chargers news and everything, for a long time. But I do want to start here with something you recently put out because you actually recently just wrote a great piece on Fox Sports about Kellen Moore, the new Chargers offensive coordinator. And as you're kind of looking in from not too far away, what did you make of them going and getting him, and what do you think he can kind of bring to this Chargers offense and Justin Herbert?
Yeah, I thought it was a great move initially when they made the decision to move on from Lombardi. Quick backstory: I actually covered Kellen Moore when he was in high school.
Oh, that's crazy! Wow. I didn't know that.
Worked in Tacoma, Washington. He played at Prosser High School, and I brought that up to him that I covered him in the state semifinals, and I forgot that they had lost the game. He's like, "Oh, you're bringing up bad memories." But his dad back then, Tom Moore, was a legendary high school coach, was known for spread concepts and then kind of spreading people around. And they were kind of a small high school in Eastern Washington, but they had always come over west of the mountains and beat up on these more talented teams in the Seattle area. So even back then, they were his dad was known as a very innovative, offensive-minded coach, and they would throw the ball over the place, balance, run the football, always had creative plays. And so, as you saw Kellen move from high school to go to Boise State, which was very similar in terms of their innovation and what they did on offense and just kind of knocking off big schools like Georgia and Oklahoma and Oregon. I think that thread just kind of continues to run through his career. You see what he's done in the NFL, one of the best offenses in the league in Dallas, the 4 years that he's been there. So I think it just kind of made sense once it became clear that the Cowboys were going to move on. And Staley, obviously saw somebody that had a similar kind of mindset in how they viewed offense. And, you have a person in Kellen that had a relationship with Justin because of those commercials in Boise. Yeah. I'm sure you guys have seen those.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that helps that they've already kind of established a rapport. And then, again, I covered this team in the past. Maybe Kellen can be to Justin what Norv was for Phillip Rivers. You can kind of have that guy that's going to be there for a while and really grow with Justin. They're going to sign Justin here to a long-term deal. Hopefully they get done this summer. So hopefully Kellen is a guy that can be around and kind of grow with Justin and really kind of take him to the next level. I mean, you saw it this year. Offense was stagnant. They can't run the football. They have one of the best throwers in the game, and for reason they can't get the ball deep, in terms of explosive plays. And so I think Kellen's going to bring that element to them because he's a very creative mind. Obviously, they ran the ball effectively in Dallas, so he'll bring that element, I think, to them to create balance, play action shots, and then kind of get that vertical game going.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just look at the Chargers offense and you just know that there's a different level that they can get to. And you know that they did not get there and they kind of hit that wall with Joe Lombardi. But, talking about Justin Herbert, he's shown his greatness in his first 3 seasons and he has some really big shoes to fill, with Phillip Rivers being the previous quarterback. Both are great in their own ways, but you were one of the few people that got to cover both of those players. Do you think that there are anything that Herbert can take away from Phillip Rivers?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that Phillip did really well is he had command of the offense. And we still haven't really seen that yet from Justin. We know the physical tools are there, but I think that's kind of what we need to see next level in terms of his ability to get people in the right play pre-snap and just really have a command overall of what's happening on the field. And one of the reasons he hasn't is because he's been in 6 different systems in 8 years.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? I mean, you go back to
crazy.
Oregon. I mean, so how is he going to master an offense if it's constantly changing?
Yeah, it's just not fair.
So if you can get Kellen in here and you can get him going, at least he's around for a couple years. I imagine if Kellen does what I think he's going to do, he's going to attract a lot of attention in terms of head coaching gig. He's already interviewed for a couple jobs, but I think that's the one thing that's kind of holding Justin back is just kind of having that mastery of the offense. And that comes with reps and being in the system for multiple years.
Yeah, and it seems like you're almost echoing a little bit of what Keenan Allen has said about Justin Herbert during this offseason, where it's like Phillip Rivers at a certain point was just going to do what he knew needed to be done, right? And like Justin Herbert doesn't feel like he has that in himself now to kind of go against even the play caller at times, right? And just kind of let it rip or make something happen on his own. He wants to be so perfect and do everything exactly the way the kind of scheme is supposed to go. But we did see the Chargers actually break some news today, giving Austin Ekeler something they haven't done for a lot of players under contract in the past, which is giving him a raise this season, almost $2 million in incentives added to his contract this year, according to Adam Schefter. And you were around when the Chargers had a very similar situation with the guy that Austin Ekeler took over for in Melvin Gordon. Do you think after seeing kind of how messy that was, this is in some way kind of the Chargers learning from how things went in the past?
For sure. I think it's the Chargers learning, and then I think it's Ekeler learning from that situation. I mean, really, Ekeler benefited from Melvin not, coming into camp because he ended up signing the long-term deal that they were going to give to Melvin. And Austin saw, what happened to the team that year. I mean, you go back to that year, they're coming off one of their best seasons in a long time, deep playoff run. They're hoping to do the same thing the following season. Melvin doesn't show up for training camp, and then he didn't show up, I think, for 6 weeks into the regular season. Crazy. And then when he did get there, he wasn't really ready to play, fumbled the football, lost his confidence. I mean,
didn't earn himself any money either, right? I mean, he didn't get the contract he ended up on.
Well, I think he ended up signing for 2 years, $16 million,
something like that. Yeah,
with
but I remember
Denver.
he wanted 10 plus. That was the big number.
He wanted Todd Gurley money.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to do that because of what had happened with Gurley and David Johnson. Both those guys ended up getting hurt. Yeah. And so the market just changed, and he just missed it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I like Melvin. I think Melvin's a good dude, but I think he made a poor decision and not just coming in and figuring it out. And so I think Austin benefited from that experience, learned from it. He's going to get a little bit, a sweetener, with this deal, and then he'll, if he produces, he'll hopefully get his money in free agency next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you look at the stats that he's put up the last couple of years. I mean, if there's anybody that's going to bet on themselves and feel pretty good about what they're going to be able to do, it's the guy who has scored 38 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons alone. But the Chargers have some pretty big needs going into this offseason, and they had some very limited cap space to work with, but they did have their full complement of draft picks. How have you kind of assessed the moves that the Chargers have made so far this offseason?
I like the first round pick. I like Quentin Johnson. Obviously it fits kind of the mold of receiver that they brought in, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. You even go back to Malcolm and those big body receivers on the perimeter. They've always had that in this organization. They have a type. They have a type that they like. And so he certainly fits that. The one thing I like about Q, though, is for a big guy, he has some quicks. He has some suddenness to him, which is unique. And so I think, in talking to Kellen about this, shallow crosses, bubbles, fly sweeps, he's the kind of guy that can make it happen, in space in those plays. And so he might be a yak guy for them that can create stuff if you get him the ball in space early, and he can make those downfield catches. I know a lot of people in Chargers Twitter have talked about the drops, and I think that's a legitimate concern, but I do feel like he can improve on that. It's not like he can't catch. I think it's more of a concentration thing, and hopefully with reps he'll improve on that. And the other thing is he's going to be the number 3 guy. He's not going to be a guy you're going to count on 10, 11 catches a game. That's going to be Keenan and Mike. Yeah. And so in a complimentary role, I like the move. I was surprised they didn't get a running back. I know, Joshua Kelly's continuing to develop, and Isaiah didn't really get a whole lot of run. Usually year 2 for running backs in the NFL, they take a nice step of development. And so hopefully you can see those guys continue to improve. But, I thought Austin had a little bit of leverage because really nobody on that offense does what he does.
No.
And so they needed him to play. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of next year, if they're gonna bring him back or if they're gonna look to draft a guy. O-line still pretty solid, I think, for the most part. Obviously, you need to get Slater back at left tackle, but I think finally they've done a good job of kind of developing that part of the offense.
You saw a lot of bad offensive lines, Eric. You and us both. So we saw I think that's another part of Tom Telesco's progression too, right? It's like this is the most we've ever seen them pour into this, right? Like 5 offensive linemen in the last couple of years, 2 first-round picks. Like we've
Brandon Staley has got to be a big part of that, but because before Brandon Staley, I mean, as you would attest to, and Phillip Rivers ringing his fists at the screen saying, "You waited until after I left to draft offensive linemen? Like, why?"
But I think they drafted guys. I just don't think they did a great job in the evaluation.
Well. Yeah.
I mean, go back to Chris Watt,
Fluker didn't really work out. Forrest Lamp, Dan Feeney didn't really work out. Yeah. No, for sure. But I think with this team, they didn't have a bunch of starting roles. They're kind of trying to run it back with mostly the same group as we saw last year when they were the big spenders and won the offseason and had all of the big moves, right? And it's like, I think they're hoping that they can get a lot healthier, right? And just hoping they can get guys like Joey Bosa back for most of the season, and Slater and J.C. Jackson maybe even. So it seems like there was a very targeted approach going into this. The only free agent they brought in, right, was Eric Kendricks over Drew Tranquil, which was his own different thing. But I do want to ask you a little bit about Brandon Staley, because we've never gotten to ask you about that. And just like you've seen multiple Chargers quarterbacks, you've seen multiple Chargers head coaches as well. More coaches than you've seen quarterbacks in your time covering the Chargers. So I just wanted to know, because wherever, obviously Staley, Lynn, before that Mike McCoy, Norv Turner, like you've seen kind of it all. What do you think is kind of different about Brandon Staley than maybe some of the coaches in Chargers past?
Well, I think early on it was the risk taking. The fourth down stuff was unique, and he was a good big picture guy. I mean, I covered him for a year when he was with the Rams before he came over to the Chargers, so I wasn't surprised about the hire because I know the Rams thought highly of him, and especially the defensive guys really liked playing for him. He had a lot of juice, a lot of energy, and I think he's brought that with him to the Chargers. I think it's like anything else. You're getting the mistakes that a first-time head coach makes, and you just got to ride through it.
Yeah.
Obviously, last year was hard. It was hard just to watch that game. I mean,
that was when you never even saw in your time covering the Chargers, Eric.
Believe me, I've tore up a lot of leads over the years having to write stories because of what happened at the end of games, and I was glad that I was not covering that game because that would have been hard to cover. I'm sure the beat guys were struggling with that.
That was tough.
But that said, I think they made the right decision in keeping him. I do believe that was the right decision because I do feel like they're heading in the right direction. And, with this team, kind of once every 4 or 5 years, they catch lightning in a bottle and everybody manages to stay healthy. And I think you're kind of hoping that this year coming up is going to be that year.
Like
2018. Yes, 2018 was the year when everybody managed to stay healthy and they were able to make a deep run. And I kind of see a similar thing perhaps with this group. If they can kind of keep everybody healthy and they have enough depth, obviously it's important for Justin to stay upright and to keep him clean. I like the pieces they have defensively. They feel like they have they're creating an identity defensively, how they want to play. I felt like they did that in the second half of last year, and now they just had to get that going on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's very clear that they're pushing all their chips to the middle because of the restructures that they did. And, they having 4 guys with a cap hit of $30+ million. So they're really banking on those guys coming back and being healthy and being able to contribute in a major way. But the Chargers are currently in their voluntary OTAs, and some players have decided not to show up until they have to for those mandatory practices. Can you kind of explain to everyone why the players showing up to OTAs is or is not important?
I think it's up to the individual player. I think for the young guys, they need to be there, obviously, to kind of earn a role or just earn a spot on the team. The veteran guys, Antonio Gates, he never came to those. I mean, he didn't.
He didn't, especially at the end, man. He wasn't even going to training camp. I don't know if I'm going to play or not, but actually I am. Training camp's over. I'm going to play again.
Oh, it's August 30th. Yeah, it's time to sign.
The check's going to be coming in that week. I need to be here. But those guys, you knew that they were going to show up and play. They were going to be. Right. They're professionals. They've been through it. And for guys that are older, they really need the rest, because you're counting on them for their bodies to get through 17 weeks.
Yeah, 100%. But does it matter that it's a new coaching staff, or is the schematic parts of it going to come along later? And do they wait for the mandatory practices for that?
I think it matters if you're the quarterback.
Okay.
I think for quarterback, the reps are really important. I think for veteran guys that are receivers and skill position guys, I think they can pick it up in training camp. They're going to get enough reps. O-line guys, because it's about developing chemistry, I think it's important for the offensive line to be there and getting reps with each other and seeing the fits and seeing the fronts and being able to kind of play off each other. So I think O-line's important. But I think for skill guys, if you're Keenan's good. I know it's a new system, but you can only run so many routes in the route tree, and he'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's had a few different coaches and a few different offenses as well, so I'm not worried about Keenan Allen at all. But it is very interesting to kind of wonder why these OTAs are important and who they're important to. And now we know. Thank you so much, Eric, for coming on the show with us, man. Definitely, great to have you back and kind of have this full circle moment. And just want to thank you for helping us out, especially early on, right? We're 7 years in at this point. You were here year one with us, helping us get this thing off the ground. And I couldn't be more appreciative of your time today and just your time every time, man.
No, awesome. Thanks for having me. Keep grinding. Keep doing what you do.
A very special thank you to Eric Williams for coming back on the show. Like I said before, really, really cool, really good dude who has always been very good to us, and happy to get him back on the show because he still has some pretty invaluable insight. And I really like the angles he can kind of look at things, because it's hard for us in the current Chargers years, having, been in it as long as we have, remembering kind of how things were back then when he was on the beat. So really, really loved that. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric_D_Williams. He's putting out a ton of great content like that Kellen Moore piece that he just put out. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. The great news is we have a very special guest on tomorrow's show, as the everydayers already know, Isaiah Spiller, future RB2, coming on the show tomorrow. We're going to get into some great stuff with him, as well as just kind of recapping how the Chargers OTAs have gone this far. And to make sure you don't miss it, make sure you go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel. And you can also find the show wherever you get your podcast from, as well as every day on all of our social media. You can find me on Twitter at DanTalkSports, David Drogemeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD, is in the show's page at Locked On LAC, which you're going to want to make sure you're following, because it's also Fan Mail Friday coming up, so you guys can get your questions in on Twitter. We still have some from last week we're probably going to use too, because we had a lot of good ones last week. But you can also call into the voicemail line and leave a 30-second Chargers question in there at 323-524-7924. So make sure you guys hit us up for Fan Mail Friday, and you can also follow us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page as well. But thank you guys. We will be back with you guys tomorrow with Isaiah Spiller, Chargers running back. But until then, take it easy and go Bulls. All right.